have a look at this China issue. Peter Harcher, writing recently in the Sydney Morning Herald in response to the belligerent behaviour of the Chinese ambassador, simply because Prime Minister Morrison last week dared to suggest an inquiry into the origins of the coronavirus pandemic, and the ambassador dished out all sorts of threats. Why should we go to such a country as Australia? The tourists may have second thoughts. The parents of students would wonder whether Australia was a place that's not so friendly, even hostile. Well, Peter Harcher wrote, this is the country whose reckless indifference to public health again inflicted a plague on the world, so far infecting 3 million people and killing more than 200,000 in 210 countries. Or is it Australia who's the danger for suggesting an inquiry? And if Cheng, the ambassador, thinks the idea of an inquiry might be dangerous to China's authorities, it suggests the Beijing regime has a lot to hide. He's been foolish enough, said Peter Harcher, to expose the reality of Beijing's intentions towards Australia. The Chinese Communist Party seeks dominance through any means possible. And Peter Harcher writes, this has long been the reality of the Xi regime. And note the tough language of Harcher, quote, to now, the party's functionaries have delivered their threats and pressure tactics in private, and coercion's never been declared openly. Now we all see the truth. There's no goodwill, only gangsterism. Wrote Harcher, Australia doesn't accept threats and intimidation from any other nation as the basis for relations. Thank you, Ambassador Cheng, says Peter Harcher, for removing the mask so that we can all clearly see the features of the gangster beneath. Now, to her credit, Penny Wong, the opposition Foreign Affairs spokesperson, stood firm with the government. And Andrew Forrest and your Chinese Consul General mate, are you listening? The blind human rights activist Cheng Guangcheng, blind from a young age, who was imprisoned by Chinese Communist government for his activism, but in 2012 escaped house arrest and fled to the US Embassy in Beijing. He's now a visiting fellow at the Institute for Policy Research and Catholic Studies at the Catholic University of America. He has said simply, world leaders must, and I quote, come together to confront the Chinese Communist Party, which he says, quote, is the biggest and most serious virus of all. He issued a stark warning last week to leaders throughout the world saying, quote, if free nations don't face the difficult task of deciding how to eradicate communist authoritarianism, a cancer on humanity, they will become its victims. Graham, pretty tough talk.
Tough talk, but spot on, isn't it? I mean, it's just so well said. The trouble is when you've got a bully like China, and it's got that advantage of all those people around the world, the diaspora, they've all got relatives at home. And the Chinese are not beyond the worst kind of threats, the worst kind of intimidation. And the ugliness of that regime shines through at times like this.
Absolutely. Well, see, Graham, there's a Chinese expert and president of the Population Research Institute, Stephen Mosher, and he is arguing repeatedly that the total number of coronavirus deaths in China is likely to be 20 times more than the official figures. And this blind human rights activist Chen says Chinese journalists have been captured by authorities and sent to detention sites because they contradicted Communist Party propaganda. And he published online videos of things such as, quote, people collapsing in the streets, body bags piling up in vans, and, quote, hearses and vans carrying bodies working 24 hours a day. And Chen is saying that once the coronavirus is under control, the rest of the world must hold the Chinese Communist Party to account. He said a top priority should be to consider how to directly and effectively assist the Chinese people in understanding, resisting and overthrowing the Chinese Communist Party dictatorial regime. Graham, China has brought the Western economies into a dark place. The irony might be that the ultimate victim could be the Chinese Communist Party. Their own people might finally have a say. What do you reckon?
Well, I'd love to think so, Alan, but you know, in the end, guns will always beat good intentions. And I think that'll be our difficulty here. I can't imagine how, it doesn't matter how many people are involved and it doesn't matter their good intentions. This crowd in Beijing, they will kill, they will imprison, they will do everything they can that's rotten and evil to maintain their jobs. And that's in the end something that I don't think the world can actually confront without a conflict that would cost the lives of millions, so it won't happen.
Right. Well, I mean, as the Chen has said, I mean, there may be a chance to educate the Chinese people. Graham is most probably right. I mean, their own people, though, I think, may one day have the final say, no matter how many plane loads of stuff, Andrew, comes to Australia as China tries to make itself look good.